Then you go
downtown, where the folks are broke. You go downtown, where your life's a joke. You go downtown, where you buy a toke. Can you go home to Skid Row? Home to Skid Row.
Yes, you go.
Little Shop of Horrors, a movie made twice but mainly known for its play adaptations. I recently decided to treat myself to the 1986 interpretation of Little Shop after singing one of the songs with my friend who had no idea that this movie even existed. I first discovered this as a play a couple years back and really enjoyed it, so I decided to watch the movie for the first time. Little Shop of Horrors follows a poor boy named Seymour who lives on Skid Row, or downtown, where life's a joke. He works in a small flower shop that is in the red, and he is in love with a girl whom has a no-good boyfriend. One day, when Seymour is out, he goes to his plant dealer, and after a freak total eclipse of the sun, a plant appears, which he decides to buy. He takes it back to the flower shop and names it Audrey 2 after the girl, because for some reason that's sweet. Little did he know that the plant would become a vicious, man-eating monster, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. This musical features very risque songs, characters, and situations, especially considering the times it was shot in. The visual effects were quite breathtaking, as they seem to have a dusty, rust-colored look in some sequences, and brighter, more vibrant colors in others, mainly featuring Audrey 2, the sweet-talking plant. The effects are not equal to today's standards by any means, but they also don't want to make you claw your eyes out, especially seeing that half of them are practical effects, being puppets and wires rather than CG, which we mainly rely on today. The editing is seamless, balancing different scenes and perfectly cutting from one thing to another, not abruptly ending scenes and making you confused like a lot of movies did. So visually, it was pretty great, considering the times especially. The film's budget has not been announced, but we can assume that it was success, seeing that it reached over $3.5 million on its opening weekend. But that's besides the point. It was also nominated for 12 different awards, winning 2, which were not significant, seeing that they weren't big names, but they were pretty decent awards. Back to my opinion. The musical numbers were well done, and the singers were well cast, especially the Skid Row girls and Audrey 2. Having a well-mixed cast was nice to see, especially not focusing on one sex or a sole race of any sort, and it seemed to focus on only having talent. Each song caught my attention with jazzy lines or chords that offset each other, making voices pop and songs contrast, keeping your attention. My favorite song of all was Cut Short, saying that it was a more light ending than the original play, but that's besides the point. Every other song was really good. There's a couple of them that were a little off. This movie was a bit lackluster with the ending. It seemed kind of rushed, and they didn't really go into depth too much on anything, but the staging was pretty great. But until the third act, where the staging seemed to kind of lose itself, and they kind of forgot what they were doing, it almost seemed like, because everything took a turn in the third act, and they didn't really know what they were doing. It wasn't visually appealing anymore. It had a couple of decent songs, but it was mainly off. It was not as good as it had been. But the other acts weren't as bad, especially saying that the third act needed to have an edge, but it didn't have that edge. All of the characters were excellently cast and dynamic, and they worked great together. It kept me on the edge of my seat even though I had seen the movie. I knew the entire plot, and I was still watching it with just amazement. You also see a young Bill Murray who is seen with Orrin, the sadistic dentist, Audrey's boyfriend, where he's extremely hilarious to me. We laughed so hard at that scene in the movie was one of the funniest of all. It took a couple of minutes to build up, and his character was completely built, but it was a nice just cameo, I would say, because he just kind of shows up and he's there for a couple of minutes and then he's gone. Orlon, on the other hand, was a little bit of a off character. He didn't really seem as authentic as some of the others, where he didn't really fall into the place where he almost slipped out of character and forgot what he was doing, it seemed like. And it sent you into this weird paradox where you were confused on what the character was there for and why he did what he did. The jokes had me laughing even 30 years in the future. It's been pretty great. These jokes are amazing. They landed every single one of them. Oddly enough, the movie only has a Metacritic score of 8.1, only having 15 critics, which is very odd to me. I don't really know why, but that's kind of amazing. No one really remembers this movie or thinks of it because it was just kind of there. It was a thing. It happened. It's over. But it's pretty great, especially considering its soulful singing and beautiful scenery and all the great shots they took and all the risks they took and everything that they did to make this movie what it was. It was by far one of my favorite movies that I've seen to this day. The comedy mix of horror and music, it blended perfectly. I have no other thoughts on this other than how great it was. I fully suggest checking out this movie. It's just the time to sit down and enjoy. There's no tense moments. You're not anxious. You're not sitting on the edge of your seat waiting to see what's going to happen, because it's just a nice, simple love story mixed in with a musical and a plant with the taste for humans.